History tells us civilization began with mud, stone, and simple tools. But what if we've been reading the evidence all wrong? What if the ancient Sumerian tablets were never myths or prayers at all, but technical blueprints left behind by a forgotten intelligence? In this investigation, we'll decode the mysterious VA-243 seal and its impossible knowledge of the cosmos, explore a strange artifact carried by the Anunnaki that appears across civilizations worldwide, and uncover clues suggesting that ancient humanity may have possessed knowledge far beyond what history allows. We'll examine the tree of life and its unsettling resemblance to genetic engineering, reveal clay tablets containing mathematical algorithms capable of astonishing precision, and connect every piece into a single disturbing possibility. What if these artifacts were never symbols of worship at all? What if they were instructions, fragments of a technological system left behind for humanity? And before this video ends, you'll see one artifact that suggests the Sumerians weren't merely writing about gods, they may have been building something for them. Among the countless artifacts recovered from ancient Mesopotamia, few have generated as much controversy as a small object known as the VA-243 cylinder seal. Preserved for decades within a museum collection, the artifact appears ordinary at first glance. Its surface is covered with cuneiform inscriptions and symbolic imagery typical of Sumerian craftsmanship. Yet, a closer examination reveals something unexpected. Near the center of the design is a large circular symbol surrounded by several smaller objects. To conventional scholars, these markings represent stars and religious iconography. But alternative researchers see a different story. They argue that the arrangement resembles planets orbiting a central sun. If that interpretation is correct, then this tiny seal may contain astronomical knowledge that should not have existed thousands of years ago. The mystery becomes even more intriguing when we consider the age of the artifact. The Sumerians flourished more than 4,000 years ago, in a world without telescopes, satellites, or advanced optical instruments. Their understanding of the heavens should have been limited to what could be observed with the naked eye. Yet supporters of the VA-243 theory believe the seal reflects knowledge of a far more complex cosmic system. Critics strongly disagree, arguing that the symbols have been misinterpreted and taken out of their original context. Even so, the debate continues because the arrangement remains unusual. Whether coincidence or intention, the seal forces us to ask a difficult question. Could ancient civilizations have possessed information that modern history has failed to explain? One aspect of the mystery stands out above all others. Uranus was officially discovered in 1781 by astronomer William Herschel. Although faintly visible under certain conditions, it was never recognized as a planet by ancient observers. Centuries later, modern telescopes and spacecraft revealed its unique blue-green appearance, caused by methane within its atmosphere. Yet some alternative researchers claim that ancient traditions contain descriptions that seem surprisingly consistent with characteristics associated with the outer planets. Mainstream historians remain skeptical, pointing out that such interpretations often rely on speculation rather than direct evidence. Nevertheless, the question remains: how could people living thousands of years ago appear to possess insights about a world that modern science would only understand much later?
The VA-243 seal may not be the only clue. Across Sumerian reliefs and carvings, mysterious figures repeatedly appear carrying unusual objects in their hands. These artifacts are depicted with remarkable consistency, suggesting they held special significance. Traditional archaeology interprets them as ceremonial symbols connected to status, authority, or religion. Alternative theories propose something far more provocative. What if they were instruments linked to observation, measurement, or the transmission of knowledge? Suddenly, the mystery of VA243 takes on an entirely new dimension. If advanced information existed in the ancient world, where did it come from? And that leads us to a fascinating possibility. How did they know the color of Uranus without a telescope? According to some theories, the answer may lie in the object carried by the gods themselves.
As we examine ancient Sumerian reliefs more closely, a curious detail begins to emerge. Again and again, powerful figures, often identified as the Anunnaki, are depicted carrying a strange object in one hand. At first glance, it resembles a simple handbag. It has a curved handle, a rectangular body, and appears with remarkable consistency across multiple carvings separated by time and distance. Archaeologists generally interpret it as a ceremonial or symbolic item, yet many researchers remain unconvinced. Why would artists repeatedly emphasize the same object in scenes involving divine beings, sacred rituals, and acts of creation? If this item was merely decorative, its persistent appearance is difficult to explain. But if it served a practical purpose, then we may be looking at one of the most mysterious artifacts ever recorded in ancient art.
Now, imagine viewing this object through a modern lens. In our reconstruction, we use an X-ray perspective to explore what might exist beneath its simple exterior. The result is striking. Instead of an empty container, the interior appears capable of housing complex components. Some theorists speculate about energy cells, crystalline structures, conductive materials, or mechanisms designed to store and transmit power. Mainstream archaeology does not support these interpretations, and no physical example has ever been discovered. Yet the comparison continues because the object's shape feels surprisingly familiar. To modern eyes, it resembles portable technology, something designed to be carried, transported, and used when needed. Whether symbolic or functional, the resemblance raises intriguing questions about its intended purpose.
Supporters of alternative theories often compare the mysterious handbag to modern batteries, portable generators, or frequency-emitting devices. They point out that many advanced technologies share a common characteristic: mobility. Knowledge becomes far more useful when it can travel with its user. Could the handbag represent a tool associated with communication, measurement, or energy distribution? Skeptics argue that such conclusions stretch the evidence far beyond what the carvings actually show. Nevertheless, the mystery persists because the object rarely appears alone. It is frequently associated with sacred trees, celestial symbols, and figures portrayed as possessors of extraordinary knowledge. Whether technology or symbolism, the handbag occupies a central place in some of the most important scenes of ancient Mesopotamian art. Perhaps the most astonishing detail lies beyond Mesopotamia itself. Similar handbag-shaped symbols have been identified in ancient cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of miles. Variations of the same design appear in regions that had no known contact with one another, from the ancient Near East to parts of Asia and the Americas. Mainstream explanations often attribute these similarities to coincidence or universal artistic themes. Alternative researchers see something else: a shared memory of a lost technology carried across civilizations. The evidence remains controversial, but the pattern is difficult to ignore. Why does the same mysterious object appear around the world? And if it truly represented a device, could it have served as a portable source of power? In other words, was this the universal battery of the ancient world? Among the most iconic images found throughout ancient Mesopotamian art is a symbol known today as the Tree of Life. It appears carved into palace walls, temple reliefs, and sacred monuments, often positioned at the center of highly important scenes. Surrounding it are kings, priests, and mysterious winged beings, believed by some to represent the Anunnaki. Traditional historians interpret the image as a religious symbol associated with fertility, divine order, and the connection between heaven and earth. Yet the Tree of Life contains an extraordinary level of geometric complexity. Its branches, symmetrical patterns, and repeating structures seem carefully engineered rather than purely artistic. The more closely researchers examine its design, the more a provocative question begins to emerge. Was this simply a sacred tree, or was it intended to represent something far more sophisticated?
Viewed through the lens of modern science, certain features of the Tree of Life appear surprisingly familiar. Its central column resembles a biological framework, while its branching structures mirror repeating patterns commonly found in living systems. Some alternative researchers have noted visual similarities between these ancient designs and the double helix structure of DNA. Of course, mainstream archaeology rejects the idea that the Sumerians possessed genetic knowledge compared to modern biology. DNA would not be identified by science until the 20th century. Yet the comparison continues because the resemblance is difficult for some observers to ignore. Whether coincidence, symbolism, or something else entirely, the visual parallels invite us to reconsider what these ancient artists may have been attempting to communicate.
The mystery deepens when we examine the figures surrounding the Tree of Life. In many reliefs, winged beings appear, interacting directly with the structure, as if performing a process rather than participating in a ritual. Some hold strange objects. Others make deliberate gestures towards specific points on the tree. To conventional scholars, these scenes depict religious ceremonies and sacred symbolism. Alternative theorists offer a radically different interpretation. They suggest that the carvings may represent the transfer of knowledge, the manipulation of life, or even an attempt to document biological engineering. While such claims remain speculative, they have fueled decades of debate about whether ancient myths preserve memories of technologies long forgotten by history.
If the Tree of Life truly represented more than a spiritual symbol, its implications would be profound. It would suggest that ancient civilizations were attempting to record knowledge in a visual language that modern observers have only begun to recognize. Perhaps the intricate patterns symbolized life itself, encoded within a design meant to survive for thousands of years. Or perhaps the resemblance to DNA is nothing more than coincidence. No definitive answer exists. Yet one question continues to linger at the center of the mystery. Were the ancient Sumerians worshiping a sacred tree? Or were they documenting something far more extraordinary? A process involving the modification of human life itself. To explore that possibility, we must now turn to another form of knowledge, hidden within clay. When most people think of Sumerian clay tablets, they imagine myths, laws, or records of trade. Yet hidden among these artifacts is something far more remarkable. Archaeologists have uncovered tablets covered not with stories, but with complex mathematical calculations. These were not simple counting exercises. They reveal a sophisticated understanding of geometry, measurement, and numerical systems that allowed ancient engineers to plan large-scale projects with astonishing accuracy. The Sumerians developed a base 60 numbering system whose influence can still be seen today in the way we measure time and angles. Looking at these tablets, one begins to realize that they were more than records. In many ways, they functioned as computational tools, preserving information that could be used to solve practical problems on a massive scale.
The true significance of these mathematical tablets becomes clear when we examine the cities the Sumerians left behind. Massive temple complexes, carefully planned streets, irrigation networks, and monumental structures required an extraordinary level of organization. Every measurement had to be calculated, every angle determined, and every resource accounted for. Without modern computers, engineering software, or digital models, the Sumerians relied on mathematical systems recorded in clay. Some surviving tablets demonstrate calculations sophisticated enough to solve geometric problems that students still study today. Their methods allowed builders to achieve levels of precision that seem surprisingly advanced for their era. The question is not whether they understood mathematics. The question is how they developed such powerful methods so early in human history.
Imagine thousands of tablets containing calculations, measurements, inventories, and architectural plans, all organized within a growing civilization. Individually, each tablet may appear simple. Together, however, they formed an information network capable of managing cities, resources, construction projects, and trade across vast regions. In a sense, the system functioned like a primitive database. Some researchers have even compared it to an ancient form of computing, not because it used electronics, but because it processed and preserved complex information. Every calculation stored on clay became part of a larger system of knowledge. Long before silicon chips and digital memory, the Sumerians had developed a way to collect, organize, and apply data on a scale that helped transform civilization itself.
Seen from this perspective, the clay tablets begin to look less like ancient records and more like components of a vast operating system. The astronomical observations of VA/243, the mysterious handbag carried by divine figures, the intricate symbolism of the tree of life, and the advanced mathematics recorded in clay all seem connected by a common theme: knowledge. Not ordinary knowledge, but structured information preserved with remarkable care across generations. Were these achievements simply the product of human ingenuity, or fragments of something greater that has since been forgotten? We cannot know for certain. But as the pieces come together, one possibility becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. What if these tablets were never merely records of the past? What if they were instructions left behind for the future?
As the pieces come together, a remarkable picture begins to emerge. The VA-243 seal and its apparent knowledge of the heavens. The mysterious handbag carried by figures linked to the Anunnaki. The tree of life and its striking resemblance to the building blocks of living systems. The mathematical tablets capable of organizing vast amounts of information with extraordinary precision. Individually, each artifact remains open to interpretation. Together, however, they suggest a civilization far more sophisticated than conventional history is willing to imagine. Now picture ancient Sumer at its height. Towering ziggurats illuminated against the night sky. Networks of knowledge connecting astronomy, engineering, mathematics, and culture. In this reconstruction, the tablets are no longer simple records. They become components of a larger system, preserving information intended to survive long after its creators had disappeared from history. This leads to one final possibility. What if the Anunnaki were never gods in the traditional sense? What if the term described beings whose knowledge appeared divine to the people who encountered them? Under that interpretation, the artifacts we have explored begin to resemble something entirely different. Not religious symbols, not myths, not legends, but fragments of a forgotten user manual, left behind for humanity. A guide encoded in stone, mathematics, and symbolism, waiting to be rediscovered by future generations. Of course, there is no definitive proof that such a civilization ever existed, yet the mystery remains. And perhaps that is why these ancient objects continue to fascinate us today. Because if these tablets truly are blueprints, then the question is no longer who they were. The question is, when will they return to reclaim what they left behind?